Have you ever wanted to make an app using React that has authentication so you can log in with OAuth providers like GitHub or Google, Facebook? There are so many, which also has a backend API that has protected data for certain authenticated users and so on. Does that sound hard? Well, I thought so too, but using Next.js, a React framework, and NextAuth library all work just out of the box. And in this video, I'm going to show you. We're going to build login, logout Next.js using GitHub OAuth. So in React, we'll display a login, logout button and different information depending if the user's logged in or not. But we're also going to protect our API routes depending if the user's logged in or not too. If that sounds interesting to you, give this video a thumbs up. And while you're down there, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It really helps support and it's completely free for you. Hit the bell button so you can get notified every time I post a video and go live. Yes, we go live and I review your open source projects and give them shout outs and your portfolios and resumes too. Right, back to this video. So let's get started. The first thing we want to do is npx create next app. I want to use the latest version and we're going to call our project video react GitHub OAuth. That's done, it's given us some tips and it says npm run to start the app. So let's just do that and check it all works first before we do anything else. npm run dev. I have an error, I make this error all the time and I purposely want to show you this error. I didn't navigate into the project and actually even, I think, tells us inside that directory. So let's navigate into that directory. We called it video react GitHub OAuth. Now we can run npm run dev. And it says it's running on localhost 3000. So here you go. So let's open the browser and refresh the page. So we can see that is working, brilliant. So we've got an app working. And if we go to the API and refresh it, it's also working. So out of the box, Next.js comes with hello kind of world API. And I'm going to show you that in the project. So what we'll do next, if I stop that running for a moment and let's open VS Code so we can have a quick look at the code. So it's created all these folders and files for us, but the ones we're interested in is the pages folder, and you can see index.js. This is what you actually saw on the UI. If I go back to that, it says welcome to Next.js. And you can see this here, welcome to Next.js. And the API that I showed you about, name John Doe, well, that's in the API folder in hello.js, and you can see it's returning a 200 status code with the data name John Doe. So we know it works. The next thing we want to do is let's add the library that we want to use, NextAuth. So we'll do npm install NextAuth. Now that's done, let's run the app again, and you will see that nothing has really changed anymore. So refresh it, it all looks fine. So we need to do a bit of work on the back end, very small amount, and a bit of work on the front end. So let's start with the back end first. So what we need to do is actually create a route that NextAuth will use to do the authentication. And we need to add the provider that we're going to use, in this case, GitHub. So I'm going to create a folder and I'm going to call it auth. And this is all in the NextAuth documentation. And then in there, we're going to create a file. And we're not going to create it like hello.js, where in the URL it was API/hello. We're actually going to do a kind of a wild routing. And what that means is it's going to capture anything that has API/auth. And the way you do that is with a square bracket, 3 dots, and then we're going to call this NextAuth. I'm going to close the square brackets and do .js. And what I mean by that is if in the URL we have API/auth, anything, so I want to put a star here as an example, but anything here, if we had A, if we had B, if we had A/B, is all going to come to this file on the API. So that's why we have the square brackets and the 3 dots. It's going to capture everything. So in this case, what it will probably be capturing is sign in, sign out, and the callback from GitHub's OAuth or any other provider that you're using. In this file, what we want to do is import NextAuth, and it's going to be from, no surprises, NextAuth. And we also want to import the provider. So in this case, we're using the GitHub provider from, that's correct, thank you very much, GitHub Copilot. It's from NextAuth providers GitHub. Perfect. And then what we want to do next is create the endpoint that can be hit. And the way you do that in Next.js is we're going to export default Next Auth. And then in here, we're going to list just one provider, but you can have multiple providers. So we're going to say on GitHub Copilot saving the day. So it's providers is the property, and in there is a collection. And then in this collection, what we're going to do is put in GitHub provider, and we need to pass the GitHub provider some information about how it can connect to GitHub with our client ID and our client secrets, which I'm going to show you how to do in a moment. So the first thing we want to do is client ID. Thank you very much, GitHub Copilot. And the next thing we want to do is client secret. Let's close that all off. And then if you wanted to do more providers, you would list these underneath. So add more providers as required. So as you want to add more providers. I'm just going to add one for now. So what we're going to do with the client ID and the client secret, do not add them to this file, because if you commit it by mistake, then people can use those in their own applications. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab it out of the process, out of the environment variable. We're going to get the GitHub client ID and the GitHub client secret. And where did these come from? Well, we need to create a file that doesn't get committed. It would be the .env.local file, and this is where we'll put it. And Next.js will automatically load this in when you start the app. So any changes to this file, you will need to restart the app. And if I go to the git ignore, you will see these files are ignored, so they won't accidentally get committed. So in here, we need matching information. So we need GitHub client ID, GitHub client ID equals. I'm not going to show you the value of mine, but I will show you where you can get it from. And then we're going to need this value as well. And to get the two values for these, you actually need to go to your GitHub profile and then go to settings. And then from settings, scroll right to the bottom, go to developer settings. And then what you want to do is go to the OAuth apps section, and you can see the apps that I've created in the past. And this is one that I've created for now. You need one for dev and production because you're going to have different callback URLs. And the callback URL is when Next.js redirects the user to GitHub to log in, and then GitHub is going to then redirect the user back to your app. So for production, in our case, it might be standup.edihub.org, but for local development, it's going to be localhost 3000. So you give it an application name, homepage URL, where you deploy to. Description is really important, but the one to make it work is this callback URL. So make sure you have that correct. And if I go to my dev one that I created earlier, I can show you what it looks like. So let me first show you what it looks like. Again, the name you can change later, same with the URL and same with the description, but this one's really important. So for development purposes, you want API, auth, callback, GitHub. And for different providers, the way the Next.js Next Auth library works is you change this for different ones. So if on Twitter, you would put not GitHub, you would at the end put Twitter or Google, etc. and so on. The other thing I want to show you is the secrets. So we have a client ID secret that gets created automatically, and then you need to generate a client secret. And I've done that already, so I'm going to add that to my file, and you can see it's starred out because it is, as you guessed it, a secret. So I've now closed that environment file now that I've put in my secrets. So next, we probably want to jump to the UI, I'm guessing next. So what we want to do in the UI is we need to do another import. We're going to import use session. I'm also going to import sign in, and we're going to import sign out. From, I'm pretty sure you can guess where this is coming from, Next Auth / React. And then the next thing we want to do at the top of the component is we actually want to get the session data. So let's create a constant, and we're going to say data session, and it's going to be use session as well. So we've got the session available to us. So now in the UI, maybe above the H1, we'll check for the session. So if there isn't a session, then we want to display a login button. So we could just say button, on click, sign in, and then sign in with GitHub button. Sounds good? And then if there is a session, we want to display a button, but the button is going to be sign out. So GitHub Copilot has automatically completed that for us. So let's drop that as a save. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. But the session is not going to work just yet. We need to do one more little piece of work. we need to actually make the session available between pages. And the way we do that is we go to the _app.js file, which is the root of the project. And we need to do a one-off thing here, which is we need to import the session provider. So import the session provider. And we're going to import that from Next Auth React as well. And then we need to add it to the page props too. So what we can do here is pass in an object, and it's going to be the session. And then we also want to add page props to the existing ones. And then in the component, we need to wrap this in our session provider as well. And we do it like so: session provider, session prop is session, and then close that. And I think VS Code automatically closed the session provider, but we'll put it at the end. And that's it. So we can close that file. That's now done. So that's looking pretty good. Shall we give it a go? So let's start the app up again. We see some errors because it can't get access to our tokens, because like I said, when you change the data in .env.local, you actually need to start the application again. So let's run it again. And you see an extra step here. It has loaded in .env.local, so you should see that it is loading in that file. Go to the browser, refresh. We've got sign in with GitHub, and we go to our API. It still also works. We haven't protected the API yet. We'll do that in a moment. So now let's sign in with GitHub. And we're going to sign in. You can customize this page as well. So now it says we're signed in, but I don't think you believe me. So let me prove it to you. Let's go back to the UI page, and where we've got the sign out, let's put our GitHub username in. I haven't typed this anywhere. We're not going to hard code it, but let's say from the session, let's get the user object. These are the public information. Let's grab the person's name. So I've hit save. Come back to here, the page is automatically reloaded. I haven't done that myself. And you can see it says EddieJild2. That's my second GitHub account for playing with stuff. So we've logged in, and I can go to the API, refresh, and that's all fine as well. So let me sign out, and I can go to the API, refresh. That still hasn't changed. We are going to protect that in a moment. So one thing I did want to show you, if I sign in, again, when you do sign in for the first time, it is going to say, do you accept these permissions? The app wants your public information. I'm going to refresh the page, and you can see, even if I refresh the page, it shows that we're still logged in. It's being maintained in session state. So let's protect our backend API. So let's open the example API we had before. And what we're going to do is import get session from Next Auth /React. Same as always. I do like consistency. And then next, we want to get the session data from the request. So GitHub Copilot has made a suggestion. It's not quite right here because this needs to be wrapped in an object. And also the get session is a promise, so we need to await that. And because we're using await in this function, we need to make it async too. And then what we can do next is we can check. If session exists, then return the data. But if it doesn't, then return an error. So we can say return a status code of 401, and instead of name, let's just say, I don't know, error. And then we can say permission denied. And hit save. So now I'm logged in, so if I go to the backend API and refresh, it works. If I log out, go to the backend and refresh, it now says permission denied. So you can see the authentication and the session state is being maintained between frontend and backend, so you can keep that all in sync really easily. And it's such a great way to get authentication in your apps really quickly and easily. So I'm really excited to see what apps you're going to build and what apps you want to build. Do let me know in the comments below what apps you're thinking of building. It sounds super exciting. And if you want to get involved in open source, don't forget to come and join our inclusive open source community, EddieHub, where we have a GitHub org where you can contribute to open source projects. We also have a Discord where we have Discord calls and daily collaborations and daily stand-up videos that we all do. It's just kind of reason why I started building this app with the authentication first, was so people could upload daily stand-up videos. So watch this space, lots more exciting things coming on how I'm going to host this app on DigitalOcean's Kubernetes cluster, and also how I'm going to host the files on DigitalOcean Spaces, which is an object store. I look forward to seeing you in Discord.